Hello, ladies, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Military podcast. I am so happy to be here with you today, and I hope that you are too. I hope that you're ready for today's topic, especially if you are a woman in business or maybe you are wanting to go into the business sector. Today, I have a very special guest. His name is Jordan, and I'm going to allow him to introduce himself here shortly, but I also want to remind you, if you have not yet joined the Facebook group, I want to invite you to join us today. Go ahead and pause this episode, go on over to Facebook and just search up Beyond the Military, or you can also go in the show notes here in the show notes on the podcast, and you can click join the actual Facebook group for Beyond the Military podcast, and along with other military women sharing how you're struggling with possible emotional well-being, or maybe even just wanting to take the next step for your goal, and also get to a few tips and learn how you can use your time wisely, so create more time to be more intentional with your family, with your loved ones, and with your goals. All right, I would love to introduce to you Jordan today. Welcome to the show. I am so happy that you're here. If you are catching this on YouTube, you'll see that today we have the video on, which, by the way, if you're driving, you can also catch this video at a later time. It's in the show notes. You'll be able to watch it through YouTube. So without further ado, Jordan, welcome to the episode, and please introduce yourself.
Wendy, thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here. I'm glad we got to connect on LinkedIn and to talk about podcasting. As I'm the host of the Warriors in Business podcast, and it's our goal and our mission for our podcast to bring value and resources and talk business strategies and so much more with fellow veteran business owners, first responder business owners, and even some military spouse business owners. We just actually spoke to one recently, so it's conversations that we have with them to talk about their journey from military to civilian life, how they became an entrepreneur, and how they run their businesses today. So it's awesome to be able to join you to talk more about these things.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you reaching out, which, by the way, you guys, I actually got, I believe it was a LinkedIn message, and he was telling me what he did and, what a great resource he would be to come on the podcast. And at first, I was actually telling Jordan right before we started recording, I was a little skeptical because I was thinking, I typically bring women on this podcast. And as you guys have been hearing, I brought up another gentleman. He's actually still in the military, a Marine officer, talking about his book. And it really just resonated with me on how they are supporting military women, how they're supporting women veterans, how they're supporting just the military community in general, and how it will not only be beneficial for you as a woman leader, as a woman veteran, and even possibly as a mother of someone that wants to join the military. And so even now, like Jordan mentioned, the business, the podcast that he's offering is for not only veterans but also first responders, which I'm sure there's women out there that are constantly in that field, and even military women that get out and are also first responders, but also now spouses. So with that, to me, it was a no-brainer to bring them on and continue to support and encourage women that are looking to get into the business world, that looking into getting into entrepreneurship, but don't know how to start or don't know where to begin, don't know how to market yourself. And Jordan and his dad started this idea with not only the podcast, but also now in the works, Bravery. And so I am just so grateful that you're here today, Jordan, supporting us women, supporting veterans, supporting the military community, the first responder community, into encouraging them to get into business and building this resource for them that's completely free, which, by the way, before we go any further, I also want to emphasize that another thing that stood out to me that Jordan was so honest and transparent about, he said, which, by the way, I'm also not a veteran or in the military, and nor is my father. So, with that, I just, thought that it was, different because he is supporting the community that he wasn't a part of. And so that says a lot about you, Jordan, and your dad. So we want to thank you for your support. We want to thank you for what you're doing out of, the your time, because that's really valuable, right? That's what I talk about here on this podcast, our time being so valuable. And you're doing just that alongside with your dad. So we're just grateful. And Jordan, tell us a little bit more about this podcast. What is it that you're sharing on there? I know you mentioned you had a recent interview with a spouse. Can you tell us a little bit more on what these ladies can find there and also tune into?
Of course, yes. And Wendy, thank you for all of that. I am grateful, along with my dad, whom he's the co-host on the Warriors in Business podcast with me. And it's just been our passion to want to serve and to give back to those who have given so much to us first. And it's, it was a privilege and an honor that I did not have personally. I was not in the military or a first responder myself. I've had family members who have served in the armed forces and as first responders as well. And it's their stories and seeing how they, not only from their time in the service, but transitioning to civilian life, seeing them, work their way through that and to get back on their feet again. Between that and just this greater vision that we have for creating an online marketplace for military, veteran, and first responder owned businesses, that has led me to doing all these things, and specifically this podcast that we've been running for a few months now, which has been taken off like a roller coaster ride, and it's been a ton of fun as we have been bringing on people from various backgrounds, whether they're the veteran business owners, first responder business owners. I mentioned earlier we talked to a military spouse who is a business owner, and that was a really cool conversation just to hear her side of the story with it. And as her husband served in the armed forces, and she had to figure out how to make ends meet and to make adjustments in her life, and had to network and connect with with others, especially like on online blog sites and things like that. And so that was really fascinating to hear her side of the story, and then to talk about how she became an entrepreneur and now actually has multiple businesses. And so the purpose of us doing this podcast, Warriors in Business, is to bring value and resources to the military and veteran community. And because we on there we talk about business strategies, successes, challenges that these business owners have faced. We do deep dives into certain topics like marketing and sales and networking, and
Mhm.
how do you access capital and how do you scale your business, and so much more like that. So it's not just about a high level overview of their journey from military to civilian life to entrepreneur, but also get into deep dives as well. And so that's been a
Yeah.
lot of fun to talk about those things so that the listeners can learn from that.
Yeah. No, I love it. And I think one or a couple topics that came to mind when you were listing out, what really they're struggling with, right? Or what isn't as easy to attain. And I think more specifically for our community, our female veterans, our women in the military, I think for the most part is really networking, and also the how do we get funding, right? I think those are like the top ones that come to mind. And with that, Jordan, and you can tell us, what, common themes you've seen, or what, is more of a struggle than the other. But I've noticed too that when we don't know exactly, right, like how to network, or
Mm-hmm.
who to reach out to, is it going to be free, are they going to charge me, where do I get funding, all of these questions that come up, we then lose confidence in the next step, because we're thinking, oh, we don't have those T's crossed, those I's dotted, and there may not be that opportunity for me, right? Or, everyone else that's supporting this veteran community, it's only focused primarily on the majority, right? A lot of men are out there um, looking for funding and actually getting the funding. Unlike women, it takes us a little longer. We have to justify more based on, our idea, or what our business goal may be, our business plan. And so what do you,
Right.
what would you like to add to that? have you seen anything different, or what was your case with, I know, the recent interview that you had?
Yeah, so it's been interesting. One of the most common things that we have come across in our discussions, not only interviews that we've done on our podcast, but through word of mouth conversations, through email exchanges that we've had, is this common theme of, okay, I was in the service and I knew exactly what was going to happen on any given day, so to speak, because there was schedules, there was expectations, there was orders, there was structure in every way possible. If there was a question about how to do something, there was some specific instruction on how to do it. And then
Right.
once they transition out of the military, then it's like the wild wild west, and they're like, what do I do now? I'm not sure. I had this blueprint beforehand, but now I don't have it, so what do I do?
Right.
And that's been a lot of the struggle that we have talked about with these veterans. And it's been interesting to hear their journeys of getting their feet established again, and establishing their own routines again. And a lot of that has come from, honestly, from genuine networking. And I would say that's a common theme that runs through all of it. And it is a means of connecting with people through a variety of means. If it's someone that you know personally and can talk to about how they became an entrepreneur, and learning from them and some of the steps that they took, or maybe it's learning from some of the mistakes they made and doing better instead. I know another valuable resource that has helped a lot of veterans is utilizing LinkedIn as well, to connect with their fellow veterans on LinkedIn. And there's a lot of groups that are like veteran specific on there, and there's forums and there's posts and articles and all kinds of things like that. But also, people know that on LinkedIn you're there for business. And so for those that want to be an entrepreneur, want to start something, that's a great start for it anyway. And it's a free resource. Of course, you can do the LinkedIn Sales Navigator for advanced business networking and things like that. But at a minimum, I can't remember exactly how many use LinkedIn. I don't know if it's 600 million plus,
Yeah, it's a
maybe
lot of
that. Don't
people.
quote me on that. It's a lot of people, and there's so many people are willing to help, and because they know it's more
Right.
intentional there than by other means. And so that's also been one of the tools. In fact, we interviewed a gentleman on our podcast who was like the LinkedIn expert, and he gave us a full deep dive on, here's how you
Mm,
create your profile, here's how you interact with other people, here's the information you need to put on there. And so so that was a really valuable conversation, because it was like a deep dive into that specific application for it. But just the general
yeah.
idea of networking and the relationships that you build
Yeah, no,
with other
I
people is the
100% on.
good is the best starting point, or one of the best starting points. Is like, who do you know, or whom can you get to know through a handshake, through an email, through a direct message on social media or otherwise, just to get it started. Not to have it all figured out in the beginning, but to get it started.
Yeah. Yeah, no, everything you just said, 100%. And then going back to the common themes, like you mentioned, I think networking is definitely where you want to begin. And LinkedIn is a beautiful platform to do it. And by the way, I'll add that episode here in the show notes. So if you want to go to that episode, make sure that you check the show notes. I'll say the title, and then I'll put in parentheses LinkedIn profile overview. But we want to be able to do that sooner than later, right? Because I mean, like we always say, time is money. The more that we can practice this and become comfortable and safe in doing it, because it can be a little awkward sometimes. Like at first when I was transitioning, I'm like, I don't want to network. That sounds very intimidating to me. I don't know what to say. And oh, by the way, I don't know how to actually interact with other or with civilian people because I'm so used to being with people around me that are wearing the uniform. We know our language. We know what we're saying. Like you mentioned, we have a blueprint. We know everything that we need to not only do, but how to say it. And so it becomes a different language when we're talking about networking, especially when it comes to asking the right questions about becoming a business owner. How do I get to this stage, or what's the next phase when it comes to, let's just say, again, going back to funding, right? And I think that that's, a great starting point that you mentioned, Jordan, because within the networking, you may not know things, or there are things that you probably could never know, or maybe you would know, but it will take you more time versus connecting with the right person, right? Like me connecting with you will now save someone time in, you know, doing a LinkedIn profile. They don't have to wait until they're getting out, because a lot of people also correlate LinkedIn to just looking for a job. But now LinkedIn is more than just looking for a job in positions, or anything to do with employment. It's also a B2B. It's also just putting your business out there, like you mentioned, networking, finding networking events. All of that's on there. And so again, what we're doing now, we're skipping all that time and going right to LinkedIn and saying, okay, I need to build my profile in a way that everyone knows that I have something to provide. I have something that I've created, or that I've put together, and it's a service, or a service that I provide, and it's available. And so by you doing that, again, you're saving time, you're networking in a way that you possibly didn't even know you could do or actually execute, but you're also learning a different skill. And I think that that's going to come in handy in the future, especially when you're out there physically, like you said, a handshake, attending these events, talking about your business. And so I love that you mentioned that, Jordan. And another key thing that you mentioned earlier, with not really knowing where to begin, I think that finding communities, right? It doesn't have to be one. I know before I've interviewed another organization that is actually supporting female veterans to go into business, but you don't just have to be a part of one. I actually encourage you, and Jordan, you tell me, your opinion on this, but or your take, to try to connect with as many organizations, communities as possible, so that you are not only practicing this new identity, but also becoming more confident in your next move, in your next opportunity, because that's I think the most important thing as you're building this new identity, because that's really what it is. You're going from your rank to, now you're a business owner, you're an entrepreneur, and now you're selling yourself and whatever product or service that you are selling.
Yeah, so there are so many different tools and resources available to us, including organizations and communities, online communities, and otherwise that we can get involved with. And that's both a positive and sometimes could be a negative, because it's like, oh, there's so much out there. But then the other side of that coin is there's so much out there. Where do I start? I have no idea. I've been there before. I'm like, well, where do I begin? It's cool to have so much, but where's the starting line? Where's that, first checkpoint that I could get at, and then, proceed from there. And so I think it's helpful to try to condense it just a little bit and not get overwhelmed by how much there is out there, because you'll discover it as you go along, as you network and connect. Don't try to get a million connections right away. Go for quality and not necessarily for quantity, because the quantity will add up over time, just by nature of how
Yes.
social media is built, and the tools that we had, the amount of tools we have available, and things like that, and the number of people utilizing that. But start small. That way you can actually focus in on those connections that you make, and the things that you want to create and provide, and things like that, and then build it up from there. It's a means, it's like stepping stones, starting down here, and just one step at a time. You'll figure it out as you go along with that. And, but with that said too, I have found it very valuable, and especially from the conversations we've had with veteran business owners, is to never turn down an opportunity to network. If somebody reaches out and is genuinely interested in wanting to learn more about you, or perhaps there's something that you can learn from them, take advantage of it, do it, go for it,
Hmm.
because you never know until, you actually go forth with it. And so that has also seem to return a lot of rewards for a lot of these veteran business owners that I've talked to, because they have said yes more often than no, at least in the beginning phases, while they were trying to figure things out of, okay, how do I launch my business? How do I create an LLC? How do I get funding? How do I, find a brick and mortar location for my business that I want to do? And then along the way, you'll kind of figure out what you need to go towards more often in terms of those things. And then what maybe you don't need to do so much of later on. So it's kind of like, first you want your mind to be a sponge and soak it all in. And then later on, you'll kind of refine that method of,
Mhm.
okay, what connections do I make here? Or what do I spend more of my time towards? And so, because it is a learning curve in the beginning, at least that's what we have come across with talking to these fellow veterans and most recently military spouse that we talked to, and hopefully a lot more. I mentioned just the one, but we want to bring on as many people as possible,
Yeah.
and so that's kind of been the overarching theme in some of those conversations has been, say yes more often than no, and yes, go for quality as opposed to quantity, and have faith that it will figure itself out if you put in the regular time and consistent effort to seeing those things happen for you, to launch your business, to to get more customers, to find funding, to do everything that you put your heart towards.
Yeah. I love what you just said, Jordan. Thank you for elaborating on that and really providing your like expert opinion here, because you hit right on when you said quality over quantity. Yes, quality over quantity. And then the other thing that I love that you mentioned was to say yes more often than no, especially when you're beginning or when you're thinking about this idea or this service or this product, right? Because again, if you don't do that, you there are going to be things that you don't know, and then possibly even a shy away from doors that may be already somewhat open. And so I just love that
Mhm.
you brought up also the analogy of the sponge right at the very beginning. You want to be able to soak it up, and really allow yourself to just be all in, and be willing to not be perfect, or for it not to be perfect. I know that's another thing that we struggle with. We want everything to line up
Mhm.
the way that we've planned it to be, and also in execution time, we want it to just happen as we planned it, right? Like as we expected, even. But unfortunately, this
Yeah.
whole entrepreneurship and a business doesn't happen that way. There's no actual blueprint. There's more so of different experiences and different ways. Of course, there are some ways that we know that are going to work better than others, but for the most part, everyone's journey is different. And so you bringing that up with connecting, networking, allowing it to just be more quality over quantity, and be genuine, right? Be genuine with the connections. And that brings up a good point with sometimes
Mhm.
maybe even thinking that you're not the right person that they can connect with. Like for example, you and I, right? Like at first I was like, I don't know if I should respond right away or I should look them up. All these things that we do,
Yeah.
because I don't know about you, Jordan, but I get tons of messages every single day on LinkedIn that are not podcast related, that are just different things that they're trying to sell me on there, which can become overwhelming.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so when I do get this genuine, invitation or genuine message, I really have to take the time to do my work first, like my research, and understand what the ask is here, and really be open to that genuine connection. And I think that the more genuine you are, the better it will be received. Because honestly, Jordan, your message was, I mean, it felt really genuine. Like I felt like you were talking to me, and you really had something to offer. And so I looked up your website, looked up your podcast. I listened to the beginning of your first episode, and I'm like, oh, they are serious about supporting veterans. I'll check them out and see if we align when it comes to military women. And I asked you that question, and you're like, no, yeah, this is something that we're really wanting to do, build this platform where they can market their product, they can market their service, be able to connect with other, local businesses, and be able to, go
Mhm.
from there. And that really just reminded me of one of the clients that I had where she was just, I mean, confidence wasn't there, not because of her experience and skills and her can do attitude, but it was more of just being intimidated on, promoting and marketing her product. And so, again, it's one of those things that we just don't know where to begin. And like you mentioned earlier, too, another great point that you
Mhm.
mentioned, not overwhelming yourself, not having too much out there, which can be a good thing, but at the same, it could also, be a bad thing. And I talked about this too in one of the episodes about choosing the power to choose, right? And so when you are, not only intentional with, looking up organizations that are maybe within your niche or maybe in your area, right? So these are things that you want to do ahead of time. So when you do get those opportunities, you're like, hey, this is, something that I could really be interested in, right? So right now, if you're a woman veteran and maybe you are even in, first responder community, this is definitely something for you, right? Because you check all the boxes, or maybe you just check one of the boxes, but you're also maybe interested in supporting first responders. Maybe what you sell, what you have to offer is for first responders, for veterans specifically. And now you have this opportunity to not only, listen to Warriors in Business podcasts, but then be on the wait list to learn more on how you can be a part of this bravery marketplace. Because what you ultimately want to do is to be able to be out there and touch as many people as possible with your product, your service. And this is exactly what Jordan is doing. This is exactly what Bravery is doing. This is exactly what Jordan and his dad are doing on this podcast. And so again, if you've been on the fence, or you're like, I just don't know where to begin, I just want to find a community, I need to check it out, I want to invite you to one, join this marketplace that um, that Jordan has put together called Bravery. All you have to do is go to joinbravery.com, and you'll be on a wait list, and you'll be able to list your actual product service on there. And oh, by the way, you also have a podcast that you can subscribe to called Warriors in Business, where you can tune in and listen to more stories, other businesses or other veterans that are in business, going into business, finding tips. Like Jordan mentioned, the LinkedIn opportunity. I mean, it's really a hidden gem right now. Not a lot of people are using it as they need to, but also there are so many people on that platform. And so if you go on there now and you're thinking about getting out, you're like, I don't know when I'm getting out, but I still need to, start thinking about my business, my future business. I, encourage you to go on LinkedIn now, and do that as well. Jordan, is there anything else that I missed out here?
No, you touched on a lot of great points, and just for the sake of clarity as well, we are in the pre-launch phase for the Bravery online marketplace. And so as Wendy mentioned, you can go to joinbravery.com. That's join BRAVARI.com to sign up for your free business listing. And so we are still putting the pieces together and hope to have more information here in the next few months, maybe into next year too, for next steps on that development there. But of course, in the meantime, for more immediate action, for you know finding business insights and hearing more of about sales and marketing and networking, and how to scale your business, how to access capital, things like that, you can go to warriorsinbusiness.com to check out our site there. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcast, and also YouTube as well. And so far we've been doing audio interviews, but I've been enjoying this video interview, so we're soon going to be putting that as part of our offering as well too. And that's a free resource for you, which is awesome. Free resources are amazing. As many as you can put your hands on and get your earbuds put in for to check out. Podcasts
Yeah.
are one of those avenues of which you can utilize. Creating a free LinkedIn profile and starting to just message people on there by just sending direct messages of like, hi, I'm looking to connect. I want to know more about your business. I see you're a veteran, things like that. Start off simple. You don't have to come forth with some grandiose speech or long thing written. Not only that, but sometimes the best 3 words to say when trying to initiate a conversation is, I don't know. I don't know about this. I want to learn more. Can you tell me more? Because it's that genuine, just honesty of like, I don't know the answers to all things, but I would like to learn, and perhaps you could show me something that I don't know already. And then later on, you'll be able to help somebody else better with that too. So that's my additional 2 cents with that. Besides everything mentioned before.
Yeah, great point, Jordan. I love everything you just said right now too. Everything you're saying is so good regarding, kind of a way that you can connect, not overthinking it and genuine and just being honest, right? Because we really don't know on what's the best way to interact in a way where you're not like creepy and weird and just coming off as someone that's just being needy and just focused on themselves. So I do appreciate that, and thank you
Mm-hmm.
again for coming on and sharing a little nuggets here and there about LinkedIn, about where to begin and focusing on quality over quantity. I really hope that we get at least one person, one of you that are thinking about business or don't know where to begin. Go over right now to joinbravery.com. Again, it's join and then it's bravari.com. Sign up, join the community so that you can not only get the upcoming news, marketplace launch, but also be able to list your business on there for free and be a part of this initiative. I am so grateful that we had this opportunity to have you, Jordan. Again, everything will be in the show notes. So if you're driving, please just wait till you're at your next destination and be able to do that there. And if you would love to learn more, or you're like, hey, I don't have the confidence, or I just would love help on my next step, feel free to go over to wendyray.com/consult, and I'll be happy to provide you with a 45-minute session where I will walk you step by step on possibly where you're stuck, what you're overthinking, any limiting beliefs that you're having, and we can go over that and be able to walk you through that plan so that you have something in hand for you to take on for your next step. All right. Thank you so much, Jordan, for joining us. And we hope that we not only get to meet with you again in the future and see how all of this turned out, but thanks again for having us. And you all have a great rest of your week. Talk to you soon.